And welcome back to Global Current Lens, where headlines are decoded, strategies are exposed, and the truth about global events comes into focus. Tonight, the nation, we turn to the Middle East, where one announcement has reverberated across capitals worldwide. Former U.S. Nation President Donald Trump has responded to Hamas' reaction to a ceasefire plan, an intervention that lands not just on Gaza but on the political standing of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In this story, personalities, power, and geopolitics collide, leaving us to ask, is this the moment the conflict edges closer to resolution or deeper into instability? Quick context snapshot: the Gaza war has stretched on through repeated rounds of violence, international mediation, and fraught negotiations. Ceasefire proposals have appeared, collapsed, and reappeared, each time promising relief and then dissolving into renewed confrontation. Recently, a new plan, backed by the United States, Qatar, and Egypt, was presented, aiming for a phased cessation of hostilities, humanitarian access, and hostage exchanges. Hamas leadership issued a carefully worded response, neither a full acceptance nor outright rejection. Explanation: into this delicate moment came Donald Trump, whose words carry weight not only because of his past presidency, but because of his looming candidacy in the 2024 U.S. elections. His remarks sent ripples across Israeli politics, already strained as Netanyahu struggles to balance military demands, international pressure, and his own political survival. The immediate event, Hamas' reaction to the ceasefire plan, was deliberately ambiguous. Explanation: its officials described the proposal as containing positive elements, but also stressed the need for revisions that address Palestinian demands, particularly guarantees on the withdrawal of Israeli forces and a path to long-term stability in Gaza. This halfway response was a calculated move, a signal to the mediators that Hamas remains at the table while still keeping pressure on Israel. Trump seized on this moment in remarks that were both critical and strategic. He stated that Hamas was playing games with ceasefire deals and warned that Israel should not be cornered into one-sided concessions. He praised Israel's right to self-defense, but also suggested that Netanyahu had mishandled elements of the war effort, remarking that a stronger leader would not be caught in endless negotiations that go nowhere. This is where the impact becomes clear. Netanyahu, already navigating fragile domestic support, is now forced to respond not only to Hamas but to Trump, who remains deeply popular with Israel's conservative base. Trump's words implicitly question Netanyahu's competence while reaffirming his own alignment with Israel's security narrative. The timing is crucial. Netanyahu is under pressure from Washington, where President Biden's team is pushing hard for a resolution, domestic factions demanding a decisive end to hostilities. Trump's intervention complicates both tracks, introducing American electoral politics into Israel's most pressing crisis. Historical and political context: the Trump-Netanyahu relationship has always been a study in mutual reinforcement. During his presidency, Trump made historic moves in Israel's favor, recognizing Jerusalem as the capital, relocating the U.S. embassy, and brokering the Abraham Accords that normalized relations with several Arab states. These decisions boosted Netanyahu's image as a global statesman who could secure unprecedented support from Washington. But history has shifted. Netanyahu is no longer riding high. Instead, he is under fire at home for his handling of the war, his corruption trials, and his reliance on far-right coalition partners. Meanwhile, Trump is in the thick of his own political battle in the United States, facing legal challenges and seeking to consolidate his campaign for a potential return to the White House. The two men now find themselves in parallel struggles for political survival. Yet their interests are no longer perfectly aligned. Netanyahu needs the Biden administration to stay engaged in ceasefire talks because U.S. pressure is essential for both Hamas and mediators like Qatar. Trump, on the other hand, benefits politically from portraying Biden as weak on foreign policy and from suggesting that only he can deliver the tough leadership Israel requires. Hamas, for its part, is acutely aware of these dynamics. By issuing an ambiguous response, the group ensures that divisions within Israel and between American political factions remain exposed. The longer the uncertainty lingers, the more Hamas can leverage international sympathy and domestic divisions inside Israel. Global reactions around the world. Trump's comments were met with mixed reactions. In Washington, the Biden administration kept its response measured. Officials reiterated that the focus remains on getting both sides to commit to the ceasefire proposal, while avoiding direct comment on Trump's remarks. Explanation, but behind closed doors, analysts warn that Trump's risks hardening positions. If Netanyahu leans closer to Trump's line, explanation, it could make Biden's mediation harder. European leaders, already critical of Israel's ongoing military actions, explanation, expressed concern that Trump's rhetoric could embolden Netanyahu's more hawkish tendencies. The European Union has been pressing for a ceasefire that includes sustained humanitarian relief. To them, Trump's emphasis on Israel not being forced into concessions risks undermining compromise. Arab capitals reacted with sharper skepticism. In Doha and Cairo, mediators noted that Hamas' cautious reply was at least a starting point, but worried that Trump's dismissal could derail progress. Saudi Arabia and the UAE, despite their normalization with Israel, remain wary of being drawn into a stalemate that inflames regional opinion. For them, nation, Trump's comments underscore the unpredictability of U.S. politics and raise doubts about whether any agreement will last beyond the Biden administration. Tel Aviv reactions were polarized. Netanyahu's supporters dismissed Trump's criticisms as secondary to Israel's war goals, but many in the Israeli opposition seized on them. For politicians like Yair Lapid and Benny Gantz, Trump's words serve as evidence that Netanyahu is losing credibility, not only at home but also with allies who once backed him without hesitation. Explanation, the global takeaway is this: Trump's voice still matters in shaping perceptions, and his reemergence complicates the already tangled web of negotiations. Economic and strategic stakes, the conflict's economic costs are staggering. Gaza faces devastation with infrastructure shattered, businesses destroyed, and hundreds of thousands displaced. Any ceasefire would need billions in reconstruction aid, prospect that donors are wary of unless a political framework ensures stability. Hamas' ambiguous response delays this, prolonging economic paralysis. Israel too bears heavy costs. Prolonged conflict undermines investor confidence, depresses tourism, and strains government spending. So the longer Netanyahu delays a resolution, the more Israel risks long-term economic drag. Strategically, Israel faces the danger of being locked into a war of attrition that drains resources without delivering security. For the United States, the stakes are both economic and strategic. Continued conflict in Gaza fuels instability across the Middle East, threatening global energy supplies. Oil markets remain sensitive to disruptions, and while prices have not spiked dramatically, any escalation could shift the balance. Washington's credibility as a mediator is also on the line. If ceasefire diplomacy fails, it undermines America's standing not just in the Middle East but in broader global leadership. Globally, financial markets respond less to the daily grind of conflict and more to sudden escalations. A failed ceasefire combined with intensifying fighting could spook investors, shift capital away from the region, and deepen concerns about global supply chains. The ambiguity of Hamas' stance, combined with Trump's pointed commentary, increases uncertainty. Markets dislike uncertainty, and this conflict is supplying it in abundance. Possible futures, the trajectory of this conflict now hangs on a knife's edge. 3 plausible scenarios stand out. Scenario 1, de-escalation. Hamas, under pressure from its population and international mediators, accepts a modified ceasefire plan. Israel, facing mounting global criticism and internal exhaustion, agrees to the deal with adjustments that allow Netanyahu to claim partial victory. In this outcome, Trump's words become a footnote rather than a turning point, and the war begins to cool. Reconstruction talks begin, and Israel recalibrates its strategy toward longer-term deterrence rather than immediate victory. Scenario 2, limited conflict. Hamas maintains its ambiguity. Israel responds with targeted operations, and the ceasefire proposal drags on without resolution. Violence continues in cycles, but neither side escalates into full-scale warfare. In this scenario, Trump's criticisms gain traction among Netanyahu's opponents, fueling debates inside Israel about leadership competence. Meanwhile, Biden's administration struggles to sustain diplomatic momentum, leading to frustration among allies. The region remains unstable, but not fully engulfed. Scenario 3, escalation. The most dangerous outcome is a total breakdown of negotiations. Hamas rejects the plan outright. Israel intensifies its military campaign, and regional actors, from Hezbollah in Lebanon to militias in Iraq, become more directly involved. The United States is drawn deeper into crisis management, balancing support for Israel with pressure to contain a widening war. Here, Trump's rhetoric gains global resonance as Netanyahu aligns more openly with his vision of uncompromising strength. The consequences could include a surge in oil prices, destabilization across neighboring states, and a crisis that overshadows all other regional priorities. Tension peak and big question. This is where the story tightens. Hamas has left the door open, but only slightly. Netanyahu stands cornered, pressured by his allies, challenged by his rivals, explanation, and now second-guessed by the man who once gave him the greatest political victories of his career. Trump's re-entry into the narrative magnifies every misstep, nation to turning the ceasefire talks into not just a battle of strategy but a political survival. The big question remains, can diplomacy hold under the weight of competing egos, domestic politics, and the grinding realities of war, or will the fragile threads snap, plunging the region into yet another cycle of destruction? The coming days will reveal whether Hamas' cautious response is a signal toward peace or a prelude to more bloodshed. Netanyahu's decisions, influenced by both Biden's diplomacy and Trump's criticisms, will set the course for Israel's future, and perhaps the wider Middle East. What's clear is that this moment is about more than ceasefire terms. It is about leadership under pressure, the shifting balance of global influence, and the unpredictability of politics in an interconnected world. Stay tuned as we continue to follow the story. For now, the question lingers. Explanation: are we witnessing the first steps toward resolution or the spark of a deeper conflict?